The Galactic Conservation Station orbited a dying moon, its sterile corridors humming with the efficient precision that characterized all Zentari engineering. Within its biocontainment wing, a problem had emerged that threatened to unravel decades of careful interspecies cooperation. The cubs were dying, not from disease or malnutrition. The medical scans showed perfect health. They were dying from fear. Torin pressed his four-fingered hands against the observation glass, his chromatic skin flickering through anxious purples and grays. As the station's chief xenobiologist, he had handled thousands of species across hundreds of worlds. He had soothed frightened creatures from gas giants and coaxed trust from silicon-based life forms that communicated through crystalline resonance. But these cubs, these small, furry offspring of the nearly extinct Calvorian ridge cats, recoiled from every being that approached them, every being except one. "She's in there again," his assistant chirped, her translator rendering the clicks into standard galactic. "The human." Torin's skin flashed orange with irritation. Rhea, the human consultant who had arrived 3 cycles ago with credentials that seemed impossible for such a short-lived species. 28 solar rotations old, and yet she had commanded a wildlife rehabilitation center on Earth for nearly a third of her lifespan. The Council had hired her as a last resort, and Torin had opposed it violently. Humans were Category 7 Deathworlders. They came from a planet so hostile that it had produced persistence predators who could literally chase their prey to death. Their own evolutionary path was written in blood and survival against impossible odds. What could such a creature know about gentleness? Through the glass, Torin watched the impossible scene unfold. Rhea sat cross-legged on the containment floor, her posture impossibly relaxed for someone surrounded by predators. The 3 cubs, each the size of a Zentari child, pressed against her, purring with a sound that resonated through the observation room. The largest cub, barely 6 weeks old, had its head in her lap. Another draped across her shoulders like a living scarf. The smallest one was attempting to nurse on her fingers. "Remarkable," Torin whispered despite himself. When any other species approached, the cubs went catatonic with terror. They had nearly died in the first week, refusing food, refusing water, their tiny hearts hammering so hard that the medical AI predicted cardiac failure. The station's psychologist, a renowned empath from Theta Principia, had attempted contact and triggered such a violent fear response that 2 cubs had seizures. But with Rhea, they behaved like cubs. The door hissed open and Rhea emerged, carefully extracting herself from her purring companions. She wore her standard attire, worn earth denim and a faded shirt with some incomprehensible human text. Her dark hair was tied back practically, and there were scratches on her forearms, superficial wounds she'd refused to have regenerated. "They're eating well," she reported, her tone professional. "All 3 consumed their full portions. I'll need to increase the protein content by 15%. They're entering a growth phase." Torin's skin cycled through confused greens. "How do you do it? We've analyzed your biochemistry, your pheromone output, your electromagnetic signature. There's nothing that should make you less threatening than any other species. If anything, you should terrify them more. Your species has apex predator markers across every measurable spectrum." Rhea smiled, that peculiar human expression that showed teeth but somehow conveyed non-aggression. "Maybe that's exactly why they trust me." "Explain." She leaned against the wall, choosing her words carefully. "On Earth we have a saying, it takes one to know one. These cubs, they're from a predator species, right? Calvorian ridge cats were the dominant predators on their homeworld before the solar flare." "Correct," Torin confirmed. "They were apex predators before the extinction event. We managed to save 3 breeding pairs, and these cubs represent the 2nd generation. They're essential to the species' survival." "Then maybe that's your answer. Every species that's tried to help them. You're all prey species, aren't you? The Zentari evolved from herd animals. Your assistant species were colonial insectoids. Even your empaths evolved from creatures that survived by hiding and blending." Torin's skin went still, a Zentari indication of profound thought. "You're suggesting they sense, what, prey behavior?" "I'm suggesting they sense safety." Rhea pushed off the wall, gesturing toward the observation window. "When you approach them, you're afraid. Maybe not consciously, but your biology remembers what it's like to be hunted. You move like prey. You smell like prey, and to a baby predator who just lost everything they knew, That's terrifying because it means they're in danger. Prey only acts like prey when predators are near. But humans aren't afraid of them, Rhea interrupted gently. We can't afford to be. On Earth, we don't have the luxury of running from predators. We became predators ourselves. When I walk into that room, I'm not broadcasting fear or submission. I'm broadcasting confidence, calm. The same energy a mother ridgecat would have. Torin processed this, his skin flickering through a dozen colors. But the teeth, the claws, they could injure you. Rhea laughed, that strange human bark of amusement. Torin, I was raised with animals that could kill me. Dogs descended from wolves. Cats that were miniature tigers. Horses that could crush my skull with one kick. We learned to read them, to respect them, to show them we weren't threats. It's not about being fearless. It's about understanding what fear looks like and choosing not to perform it. Through the window, the smallest cub had noticed Rhea's absence and was mewing plaintively at the glass. I should get back, Rhea said. They're still fragile. They need consistency. Wait, Torin called out as she turned to leave. His skin had settled into a humble blue. I apologize, I opposed your hiring. I thought a human would be too dangerous, too aggressive. I was wrong, Rhea's expression softened. You weren't entirely wrong. Humans are dangerous. We're aggressive when we need to be. But we're also something else. Something that maybe only a death world could produce. She glanced back at the cubs. We're gentle with our strength. Because we have to be. Because on Earth, if you can't learn to control your power, you don't survive long enough to pass on your genes. She entered the containment room and the cubs swarmed her immediately. Their fear replaced entirely by joy. Torin watched. His centuries of xenobiological training, reframing everything he thought he knew. The galaxy feared humans because they were predators. But perhaps predators were exactly what some creatures needed. Not to hunt them, but to understand them. To speak the language of confidence and strength without wielding it as a weapon. The cubs were purring again. A sound like distant thunder, and the human sat among them, a daughter of Earth, teaching the galaxy that sometimes the fiercest protectors came from the most dangerous worlds.